What a fun night of fights last night. Guys, I almost didn't bother simply because I didn't think either the UFC card nor the Jaime Munguia card was going to be that interesting. I thought that this was going to be a scripted welcome home fight for Jaime Munguia, but boy, was I wrong. We were treated to at least 3 walk-off KOs. 2 in the UFC. Hats off to all fighters for just really putting on a terrific show last night. So let's start with the UFC card. I tuned in just at the beginning of the main event card. Here we had a one-punch KO victory by Dustin Jacoby versus Vitor Petrino. Now, to be honest, I thought that Petrino was winning the fight up to that point, but Jacoby just came out. I wouldn't say he came out of nowhere, but he just managed to land these one-punch KO on Petrino and secure the victory. So really hats off to him for pulling the rabbit out of the hat. Now, he wasn't getting really tagged up or beaten up badly, but I felt that, if we were going to go to the scorecards, I thought they were going to give it to Petrino. Now, another great walk-off KO by Cub SWANSON versus Billy Quarantillo. Now, again, hats off to both these fighters because they put on an incredible technical display of striking skills. It was really just high level with, they weren't doing these sort of I go, you go, my turn to do offense, it's your turn to do defense, and now we're going to flip roles. Now, they're striking with each other. So very high level striking with defense combined. So if you get a chance, do check out Cub Swanson's fight versus Billy Quarantillo. And then, of course, in the main event, we had Joaaquin Buckley stopping Colby Covington. It was the doctor who determined that Covington was unfit to continue to fight due to cuts around cuts and the blood that was streaming into his right eye. Now, it looked to me like Colby had a cut underneath his right eye and somewhere up here on his forehead. But the cuts notwithstanding, I did feel that Colby was perhaps mentally beaten even before the doctor stopped the fight. I felt that Covington was really shooting in on Buckley sort of in a half-hearted sense. In other words, he wasn't really going for the takedown. He just didn't want to deal with the striking anymore. And then he would persist in trying to grab a leg even when he was on all fours on the ground, which at that point, you have really no hope of actually getting a takedown when you're on all fours and just grabbing somebody else's leg. This happened multiple times during their fight. And to make matters worse, every time Colby's cornerman would close the cuts between rounds, before the bell even rang to resume the round, Colby would start tapping it, and then it would just start bleeding again before he even stepped out there for the next round versus Buckley. So one of the journalists tried to bait Dana into saying that Colby was looking for a way out with the cuts, and Dana surely did not take that bait from that journalist and in fact kind of put him back in his place. But I will say this, I don't know that Colby was intentionally trying to make the cut bleed, but he did not protest when too much when a fight was stopped due to the blood. That said, in my opinion, Colby Covington kind of looked defeated mentally, so I don't know if that's a sign for him to bid us adieu, or if he just needs to regroup and reconsider what he hopes to accomplish, either with the UFC or with MMA in general at this point in his career. Because if you no longer have the heart or the stomach to be in there and fight your rear end off, it's not a good place to be in any combat sport. You don't want to just go out there to survive and collect a paycheck. That's recipe for disaster. Now, let's take a look at that boxing card in Tijuana, Mexico. I wasn't even going to bother to tune in because I thought this is just going to be a completely scripted event in a sense that Jaime Munguia is, fighting in his hometown. It's his homecoming. He's fighting somebody I'd never heard of, probably most of us had never heard of, Bruno Saras from France. Of course, we hadn't heard of him because he's only ever fought in France up to this point. Until he stepped in the ring with Munguia, Saras was 24-2. So, respectable record. Now, here's the interesting thing to note. Saras this minor belt, very minor belt, called the EBU, I guess that's European Boxing Union silver middleweight belt. So, I mean, how much credence do we give to the EBU, and how much, it's not even a gold version of their belt, it's the silver version of their belt. But this is the value of holding even one of these minor belts. It kind of validates you being brought in as a B-side for somebody like a big name like a Jaime Munguia. Then they can say, hey, well, we're facing this guy with a minor belt. Well, of course, Saras did not bother following the script by, Team Munguia. He secures this basically one-punch KO of Munguia in the 6th round. And this is after Munguia dropped him when he had his back against the ropes. Munguia drops him with a right-hand left hook, I think, and Saras just fell on his side, just kind of underneath the bottom rope. So on the live stream, I certainly felt that Munguia was going to eventually KO Saras, simply because for the next few rounds, Saras was pretty much still just moving away, moving in reverse or laterally. So I thought eventually, Munguia is going to corner him, catch him on the ropes or in the corner, and then unleash, one of his patented left hooks to the body, left hook to the head, right hand. So I'm not sure what was going on with, Munguia in camp, but looking at that KO sequence, I'm wondering whether or not Munguia had enough tough sparring during his training camp, because he had Saras against the ropes, was somewhere sort of in the mid-range of the ring, in the middle of the rope, and, Munguia unleashed uppercut, right hands, left hooks, but then he stepped away without keeping his guard up, meaning with his left hand, and that's when Saras saw his opening for his straight right hand, which was picture perfect, landed exactly on the button. Munguia falls flat on his back and then does the right thing. He tries to sit up, realizes he's got to try to get up and beat the count, turns over to get on all fours, and had sort of propelled himself up, but wasn't fully standing and in control of himself by the time the referee reached the count of 10. So, of course, the referee was obligated to wave it off. Now, one of our viewers, I think it might have been Gil, in our live stream said, LOL, the referee's going to have a tough time getting home tonight. And I think my reply was something like, yes, I think the referee's going to need, armed security to get out of the arena and get to his house if he lives in the Tijuana region. But truth be told, from what I can tell, there was no major protest neither from Jaime Munguia nor from his corner about the stoppage. Now, I did try to find post-fight interviews to hear from Munguia or Team Munguia about their interpretation of what happened in the ring. I would also love to hear from Bruno Saras about how he saw that opening. But I guess the main point is here that, in spite of how big of an underdog Bruno Saras was before he stepped in the ring, I mean, that's why we actually have to have the fights, right? We can't just look at two people, look at their records on paper and say, hey, well, this guy surely will win, because in this case, it was a major upset. Now, one interesting point I read was that I think Saras said that he really belongs at a lower weight division. I'm not clear about that. Again, I need to do more research. So I think he's saying he really belongs at a lower weight division, but he's willing to give Jaime Munguia a rematch. So, I mean, we'll see if that ever happens. I imagine it's valuable to Team Munguia to get the rematch just so they can sort of psychologically prove to themselves that they're superior. But huge props to Bruno Saras for pulling off the upset. I mean, he's never fought outside his home country. He's coming into Jaime Munguia's backyard, and he pulls off the upset as a complete unknown. That takes incredible faith and incredible presence of mind. And of course, he put in all the hard work in preparation to step in there. So when you get a chance, you can check out a live stream to see my actual live time reaction to all these KOs. In the meantime, please drop a comment and tell me which KO impressed you the most last night. Tell me about it in the comments. I'd love to read them.